Hey, hey, happy 2023, guys. This will be the start of our new season 4 for Tall Tales with Taco Bell. I got to tell you, it has been exciting. It's been a lot of fun. I've had some fantastic guests on my show. It's a very, very small podcast. 1,500 people on YouTube, 1,500 people on Facebook. And that's great to me. If one or two people get to watch it, and they enjoy it. That's all that matters. I want to thank my good friend Michael Costanza uh, for redoing the music on my intro. The problem with I actually love the old music a lot, but there is a company that decided that our $20 we paid to another company for the rights to that song wasn't going to work for them, and they wanted more, and so they kept putting copyright violations all over YouTube for my last intro. So we fixed that. Now we actually can tell them to go pound sand, and we will get no more copyright violations on Tall Tales with Taco Bell. But tonight, we are actually going to sit and talk to my old boss, Captain Zane Lemon. He's a retired American Airlines chief pilot. And if you guys that are in the airlines know, we have directors of flight and we have chief pilots. And the chief pilots are there. They might have 5,000 pilots in their base. Um, so I always heard guys say, my goal in life is to retire without the chief pilot knowing my name. I think that's BS. You know the chief pilot, they take good care of you. And in my case, this is one of the best chief pilots I've ever had because of a incident, a little run-in I had with the FAA, and for fear of losing my job, I'll tell you about that later as we bring Zane on. But Zane, I ran into him up in Omaha the other night, and we were sitting there talking at the bar, and he was telling me some fantastic F-4 stories as young Lieutenant Lemon over in Korat, Thailand. So I asked him if I could bring him on as my first guest for the year, and he said yes. And so we're going to have some fun. Without further ado, Zane Lemon, folks. How are you, Zane?
Well, I'm doing fine. I'm sitting here in my office. I just happen to be holding my favorite airplane right here, a little model I got that was given to me given to me by an RF-4 guy years ago. Matter of fact, he flew with American Airlines, Paul Boyer, as a gift years ago. So anyway, it's great to be here, Taco. Start 2023, and maybe I can recollect some of those stories again. But I've got I got probably a few more, but I'm trying to think of them right now.
Well,
That I guess you'd say the lunacy sometimes of the Air Force on how things are run,
oh,
but
sure.
but anyway, it's great to be here. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, as I kind of alluded to in the intro, I was a young probation guy in 1998 on probation. I had a flight engineer in Dallas, and I was into small airplanes, and so I was building my tailwheel time to buy my biplane. I had that 1929 Fleet, and so to go fly it, I ended up renting a Citabria, and I'm out flying it around, and the some guy, some yo-yo, gets his binoculars and looks up, and of course the Citabria has 3-foot giant red airplane with white letters on it, so it's easy to see the numbers. And the guy got his binoculars out, and he got my tail number, and he reported me to the FAA and said I was buzzing the town of Keller at 50 feet down Main Street or some obnoxious thing. Um, and so I get a call from my friendly Fed here from the government here to help you. And he goes, hey, Mr. Bell, were you renting Citabria November, whatever? And I go, yeah. On Tuesday? Yeah. Did you fly over the town of Keller? Yeah. Actually, I flew to Stagecoach, but the winds were kind of out of limits for me. And so I flew back. And he goes, what's this about? And he says, oh, we got a report of a low flying aircraft. We get those all the time. What altitude were you at? Well, it was 1,000 feet transient over there and then taking off, whatever, climbing out, hanging a right and heading west, going over to Hicks. And he goes, okay, well, it sounds like no big deal. Thanks so much. Da 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 da. Hang up the phone. 3 days later, I get a certified letter in the mail saying, turn your license in for 6 months. You've been found in violation of FAR, umpty frats, and federal aviation regulations, and turn your license in. It's been suspended. And I'm like, whoa. And I remember You were the first person. I got in the car and I drove to the office and I presented the letter to you, and you told me about, well, first of all, you said close the door. So I closed the door and you're like, okay, tell me straight. Were you out flat hatting? And I'm like, no, I wasn't. Not at all. Not this time. I mean, I've been chasing cows and stuff, but no, I wasn't flat
Yeah.
hatting. And you said, okay, well, if you weren't flat hatting, it's going to take about a year and a half to resolve this. We had a 777 pilot who got all the permissions in the world, and he flew a brand new 777 down some. You remember that, some small
Yeah.
airport in Florida, and the FAA was trying to
Yeah.
suspend his license.
Ocalapa or someplace out there in Florida. It was a community of pilots, and they had a big runway. And the gentleman, I won't name his name, Cliff Johnson, but anyway, he he and a gentleman by the name of Frank Wally were taking a plane out down to Miami, is what I understand. And he told his friends there at the place where he lived that he'd bring a 777 down the runway,
Uh-huh.
and he did. That was about the last thing he did. So anyway, it's a true story and everything. But his outcome came a little bit worse than yours.
Well, that was a big worry, right? Hey, I just got hired at my dream company, and now all of a sudden I'm going to lose my pilot's license. I remember you going, hey, it's going to take a year and a half for this to settle out, which it did. And they got nothing and liked it. But you, as a boss, you said, you know what? Don't worry about it. If this happens, you get suspended. I got your back. You'll work here in the office. I'll put you to work, and you can sit here for 6 months and do paperwork for me and be my little gopher. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, this is great. I'm not going to get fired. I love this guy. I jump off a cliff for you, Zane.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. So now let's go back. You were Lieutenant Zane Lemon, 1972. You get your wings. What got you into the Air Force?
Well, I'll try to make it brief. As a kid, I always wanted to be a fighter pilot. I didn't want to be a lawyer, doctor, or any of that. It's a businessman, whatever, farmer. I was raised back in a little farm town in Illinois. So that was my dream. That's what I wanted to do. I made all the model airplanes and had them hanging from my ceiling in my house and in my bedroom. I tried to get a lot of the movies that were out back then in the 50s. Of course, Flying Tigers with John Wayne was my favorite.
Great one.
As a matter of fact, the gentleman that Wayne emulated in the movie was David Lee Tex Hill, who later in my life, when I was chief there in Dallas, Tex and I became friends and went down to his place in San Antonio and talked about the Flying Tigers. And so that was how I got started. And that was a dream that I wanted. I went to college at Southern Illinois and was in the ROTC there. To be honest with you, I didn't care what degree I got. I just wanted to get the hell out of there so I could get my commission and get in the Air Force. And so that took place. And I went off to flight school in Big Spring, Texas, at Webb Air Force Base, and was fortunate to graduate high enough in the class to get an F-4. So that's kind of how I got started in this. But that's what I always wanted to do. And so as a young kid that had a dream, the day I stepped up the ladder and climbed in the F-4 for the first time, I was realizing that dream. And so here in the States, you can take, and if you have something you want to do as a dream, if you work real hard, you can accomplish that. So from there, I went to George Air Force Base out in Mojave Desert, Victorville, California.
Uh-huh.
Our class, we had 14 front seaters in the class. So the training at that time in the F-4, it was pretty intense. They had some old hands in there, primarily majors and up were the instructors. And so it was a tough road to hoe. So go ahead.
Go back for a second. You had 14 front seaters. So who were the back seaters?
Well, the back seaters were basically had went through nav school in the Air Force, and they, when you go to nav school, and I hate to say this, but a lot of those guys had not made it through flight school. When I went through flight school, I think we had about 60 65, 66 in my class, and we only graduated 38.
Uh-huh.
So those guys that didn't make it through would traditionally then go off to nav school and then come back and either get in the F-4. One of my classmates ended up and is one of the top guys in the backseat of the SR-71 program. And so that's how that basically happened. And a lot of the guys would enter in the Air Force knowing because of eyesight primarily. They couldn't be in the front, so they elected to be in the back seat.
But back, if I remember right, back in the early 60s, they were actual winged aviators that were stuck in the back seat, right?
Exactly. They had two pilots in the airplane. A good friend of mine who lives here locally started out in the back seat as a pilot, and then came back and then did his tour in Vietnam, went back and then went back to school for an upgrade, and then went back over. So back in the early part when the Phantoms went to Southeast Asia, there was two pilots in the airplane. Yeah.
And they called those guys Gibbs, guy in back or something?
Guy in the back. Yeah.
So
I mean,
you go off. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's that's what they call them and everything. And those guys, and I got to tell you, in my experience over there, especially over there, the weapons guys, Wizzos that were in the back could fly the airplane. We'd actually let them go up and refuel, and I mean they were good, and incredibly the guys, especially in our squadron, and I know in the rest of the squadrons around over there, they had some good folks sitting back there. Matter of fact, they kept your ass out of trouble most of the time. And my backseater every once in a while would say something effect like, "I don't think we need to be doing that. Do you?"
A little sanity over the ICS.
That's a good plan. Okay.
Okay, so you end up going to the Philippines for jungle survival.
Yeah.
Did they also put you through SEER school? Did they have a SEER school set up at that time?
What they had back then is once you finish flight school, actually before I went to Victorville, I went through the basic, I guess you call it SEER school. This was the basic survival school up at Fairchild, Washington. And a story up there, I got to tell you this. We were going through and you had your little flight of, I don't know how many folks were in it and everything. And so what they had was one of the last things you did was what they called escape at that time, escape and evasion. So what they did was they had this area and it was a lot of trenches and tree stuff in there. And they would put you at the start at night and they give you a little stick. So you had this little stick and the object was you would walk around with that stick down there and they had trip wires. If you trip the wire, it'd send a flare up and all this stuff. So you had I think it was like 2.5 hours to do this. So this guy that later I talk about RF guys, and that's kind of what I hung around with there for a while. But this guy was on his way over there to Oostdorn in the RFs.
Uh-huh.
So we were sitting there at night waiting for the bell to go off, and we decided that we weren't going to use the stick. We were just going to take off and run through the damn place and get to the end. And then everybody else is sitting there farting around trying to get through for 2 hours. Then we could take a break for an hour or so.
Right.
So the bell went off and away we went. And the flares were flying all over. People were yelling, screaming. And so the instructors are yelling at us. And so we run all the way through and we get down to this area and it was all barbed wire fence. So we laid down, got our water out and said, those fools would be another hour before everybody gets there. Well, this Jeep pulls up and these three guys get out and they're huge. And they got on Russian uniforms. They said, what are you guys doing? And said, well, we're just relaxing to waiting for the end of this. Well, they come over the barbed wire fence and grabbed our asses around the neck and they yank us up and put us in the Jeep and haul us down to the interrogation room. And so we're down there and they bring us in and they're throwing us around in there. And so they throw us against the wall. And the way it worked was all you were supposed to do was give them your number. We had little numbers on. I think mine was 120 or something. And so this guy walks in and he's got like a Soviet outfit on. He's got all the stuff on. and sits down and said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm 120." He says, "No, you're Lieutenant Zane Lemon." What? And he told the other guy, and he had in front of us folders with our names. And what they did was, Taco, this was a special place if you're going in the fighter business over there, Annette. And if you were in the States flying 141s around, you had another place that you went. But they had a list in there in our group of the guys that were actually going to Vietnam. And so they gave us all kinds of special treatment. It sucked. Well, we were in there for probably 2 hours, and that's before everybody else showed up to start the whole process. So,
Right.
so they were really pissed that we run down and blew off all the flares. And I look back, and this guy and I actually rode over on the same airplane over to Vietnam and to Thailand together. And all we could do was laugh because it was so damn funny, all that stuff going off in the air. So anyway, it all started early.
So, Steve, I spoke to Steve Ladd, and I'll have to find out when he went through over there, but he had gotten done with the jungle survival portion in the Philippines, and he was sitting there drinking a beer at the bar, and the guy next to him had a 105 patch on.
Yeah.
So he says, "Hey, where are you heading to?" And Steve goes, "Oh, I'm going to Vietnam F-4s." He goes, "Well, where?" And he says, "Da Nang." He goes, "Ah, you don't want to go to Da Nang. Da Nang sucks, man. You can't party, you can't go out in town. Man, you get shelled every night. That's a horrible place." He goes, "Well, that's what my orders say." He goes, "No, let me tell you what you need to do." He goes, "You go back to the Mac terminal and you wait until you hear Karat,
Yeah.
call for Karat, and you get on that C-130 and you fly over to Karat. And when you get off, there's going to be a guy. He'll, um, you know, you can give your orders in there."
Well, they
He
had a
goes,
sponsor. They had a sponsor.
"Right." He goes, "Yeah, but my orders say to go to Vietnam." He goes, "No, you don't want to go to Vietnam. Trust me. You want to go to Thailand." And so I don't, he did it. I mean, that's ballsy as hell. He
Yeah.
jumped on an airplane, flew to Thailand, got off the airplane. He goes, there's a guy sitting there with the clipboard checking all the
Yeah.
pilots in. And he comes up to him. He goes, Steve Ladd. He goes, "I don't have you on my list. Let me see your orders." And he hands him the orders and goes, "This is Vietnam." And he goes, "I'm not in Vietnam." He goes, "No, you're in Thailand." And the guy ended up keeping him. And so then all the messages were going out looking for young Lieutenant Ladd. And he replied to the guy, he goes, "Yeah, I got him. He's ours. We're keeping him."
Yeah.
And that's how he stayed in Thailand.
And I love it. I love it. Well, he was scheduled to go to Da Nang. I've got a Da Nang story that when the way it worked, you actually had an instructor go with you on your first ride, and
Uh,
so you had all these guys. When I showed up, I remember walking into the squadron, and they had one of the I think it was a 105. I can't remember, Taco, but they'd lost a plane out of the wing, and they were going up on the SAR missions, and the guys, the big hitters, were standing in there waiting to go. And when I walked in, but so you had a guy. His name was Mike Stevens. He was the ops officer that rode with me. Mike ended up, I think, having flown the most combat missions over there in the fighters that
wow.
guys did, like 700 or some damn thing. So Mike was in the back seat with me, and away we went. And we're going up to North Vietnam, up near a place called Vinh, and we were going to do a bombing mission. There was two of us. We refueled, got that out of the way, and we're on our way in. Well, the weather sucked, and we couldn't get in to do the mission. So we turned around, and as we were starting to turn, I looked up and I saw this airplane come up through the clouds and roll over and go back down. And I said to Mike, "It's a MiG."
Oh, no way. Did you actually have a chance at one?
No, no, no. And Mike just said, "No, it's not. It's a Navy A7." And it was. Oh,
Oh, it was?
yeah, that's what it was. So I thought, holy shit, I'm big. And so anyway, we go and we're heading back to Da Nang. And now you have to realize, as you know, in flight school, at least in the Air Force, in Big Spring, Texas, West Texas, I never saw a cloud in a year.
Right.
I go to the Mojave Desert in California. There's no clouds out there either. So you're flying around VFR all the time. Well, I get over here and the weather's in Da Nang and it's raining. And so Mike says, all you have to, and we're still carrying 12 500-pound bombs. And so Mike says, all I ask you to do is just pound it on the runway and stop, get on the brake. Because the Phantom had the deal where it would hydroplane. And so anytime we're in the wet weather, you'd had to park it and then get on the brakes, which I did and got stopped. He was pleased with that. But so we pull up to and they have revetments. So we jump out, we run down into this area. It was like in a bunker, if you will. And we wait for our next assignment. We're down there probably a couple hours. So they came back and told us where they wanted us to go. So we run out, we get in the airplane, and the kids out in front. Now we're back in the revetment, and on each side are TERS and MERS, the loaders full of bombs.
Right.
Yeah. So he gives me the signal to start. So I reach down and I start it up. Well, I bring the engine up over the horn, the number one engine, left engine. Well, nothing's happening. And I keep it running for a while. And I'm going, well, what the hell's going on? Well, I had not turned on the master switches. So I just reached down and turned the master switches on. Now, all that time it had been pumping gas back into that can back there. And this son of a bitch goes kaboom. And the fire shoots out and goes up. And the kid out front drops his headset and takes off running because he thinks it's a rocket attack. and the plane just shakes when it happened. And Mike is in the back, and all he says is, "Don't do that again." So, of course, the EGT just goes zoom up and back. So anyway, that was my first combat. The start of my second one, and doing that. So it went downhill.
Did you make it? How long did it take you to go from Da Nang back to Thailand?
It long. Normally our missions, Taco, I looked at my logbook. Very rare did they get over 3 hours, but we always, every time we went up, we would have to refuel. And because we were basically of the F-4s, the farthest from getting into the area, whether it be Da Nang, into South Vietnam, or going up in North, or into Laos for that matter. So we'd always be up on the tanker refueling. So we got pretty good at that, the night and the weather and everything. I lost one of my classmates, went over there. And matter of fact, he was the top gun in my class and going through Phantoms. And he got over there, and of the 14, there was, I think, 3 or 4 of us went. The rest of them went to Europe, I guess. But he couldn't refuel. He was so nervous about being there that he couldn't refuel. So they sent him somewhere else. One day he was there, next day he was gone. So,
jeez. So
yeah.
What were the feelings? I mean, the first time you went on a combat mission, what kind of feeling do you remember? Your first trip out?
The first thing is you're always excited, and I had Mike in the back, and all the guys that were there. You have to realize in a combat fighter squadron, regardless of your rank, regardless of how long you've been there, everybody is in your camp. And so all these guys that had been there, we had MiG killers and, all kinds of folks that were in there with a lot of missions. Air Force, 2 guys had won the Air Force Cross, win the squadron, and we had a great squadron commander. So you're excited and everything. But as you well know, that once you get into the business and you have a mission to accomplish, that is what you focus on. This other stuff, and that I remember the first night that I got to go up over Hanoi. We were on the tanker, and we're going around, and it was an absolutely gorgeous night. I mean, the stars and everything, and we're going around in circles, and you could look over towards Hanoi and see the surface-to-air missiles, the SAMs going up, exploding. And the backseater says, "Well, I guess that's where we're going." So you would get so busy that you didn't really think about that. I don't think I ever thought about getting shot down. I don't remember that. It was just something you just continually did, and everything. And they taught you certain things. There were certain rules you had to follow, and you start showboating it like a couple guys in the squadron did, you can get yourself into big time trouble. So
Did
listen
you
to
ever
those.
did you guys ever have any notes on, okay, hey, this is what you need to carry for survival in
Yeah,
case you go down, take
yeah.
this, take this?
Well, the way it was set up is the life support guys would put you. We had two radios, batteries. We would go into the freezer and pull out two of the small, those little army bottle canteen bottles that you can put in your flight suit,
Yep.
and they would be frozen. And you put them in your flight suit. We had a knife, gun. We carried a gun and 50 rounds of ammunition. And on the ammunition, I never loaded my gun. I figured that if I got shot down, I sure in the hell wasn't going to win the war in Vietnam. It's been going on for 9 years. Me and a
Right.
30 pistol's not going to win it.
Right.
So I unloaded mine for fear that maybe a local or somebody pulled out and shoot me with it. So do that. But they had the survival vest that we had, Taco, had all kinds of things in it, and everything. So that was all geared towards that. I don't remember carrying anything other. I don't remember anyway anything other than what I had in that, because I felt
Okay.
and plus you had a seat pack that had all kinds of stuff in it as well, and that. So raft and all that kind of stuff. So you never really give it much thought other than what they had in there. I don't remember carrying anything extra in that. So yeah.
Now, in Omaha, you were telling a story about watching a plane blow up at the end of the runway, or guy came in with all the bomb. Yeah, that's it.
Well, the the way it worked at Karat, they had different. They had the morning group going. You'd have an afternoon, and then the all night would start up like 8 o'clock at night, and we'd go up at night supporting 130s and up on the trail, up on the Ho Chi Minh Trail and stuff. And the A7s would normally be going off in the early morning, as I remember, and during the afternoon. Very rare the A7s go up at night. They didn't do any of the night stuff, as I remember.
Mhm.
So we're sitting there. We had come back, and it was early. It was early in the morning, and we were down in the de-arming area, which of course is at the departure of the runway, and the A7s were taking off, going up, doing whatever they were doing. So we're sitting there, and this guy comes screeching by, and he's on the binders, and apparently he had the A7 with the heat and everything they had there could carry only I can't remember how many 500 pounds, but it wasn't anything like what we could, because they didn't have afterburners, so they're running
Right.
military power and with the heat and everything. And he apparently had a compressor stall and got on the binders, but he went sliding by us and hid out there in the dirt. And there was shit flying all over the place. And two of the bombs come off the rack and were flipping through the air. And I remember sitting there watching that, going, "Whoa!" And you asked me, well, wouldn't they arm? And I was sitting there thinking about it. But what those 500-pound bombs had on it was a small propeller. And that propeller would turn so many revolutions, and these little ball bearings would pop out.
Uh-huh.
And when all the ball bearings are popped out, that's when it was armed.
Okay.
So apparently what happened was, you were asking, well, why didn't it go off? He probably didn't have enough speed when it was flying through the air, tumbling, to make all those get the propeller going. So they hit out in the dirt. Well, this guy, the canopy comes off, and he's in there raising hell, trying to get the damn thing hit out. And he is hauling ass. I mean, he is running and across there. And we're sitting there, and the plane is smoking. It didn't catch on fire, but it's out there smoking and everything. And we're sitting there, and the backseater says, "Wow, what the hell happened with that guy?" And
This is your major, the really senior
no,
guy?
this was later on when
Oh.
you fly one ride and that's it. You're on your own after that.
Oh,
With
man.
instructor. But I had a gentleman by the name of Bill Rivette was in back seat with me all the time, and him and Frank Rosa. And so anyway, we're sitting there going, and they had their crot. We had a young guy was messing in the hangar, and the ejection seat went off and threw him up through the ceiling. We
no.
all kinds of stuff. I was at Mobile one night watching the planes come in. You got to check the landing light, make sure the gear's down. and this EB-66 is coming in, and I'm watching it, and he
And
called up
that's wait a sec, that's the whale, right?
the whale. Yeah, it's what you guys E3 or E something like that.
The
You got,
Navy had them.
yeah,
Sure.
Navy heads. It's the same, basically the same plane. They used it up there for jamming and stuff like that up north that during the big rise. So, but he's coming in, and I'm watching his nose light on the nose gear. All of a sudden, it starts drifting off to the right, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? And I'm watching. It keeps drifting over. Next thing you know, you see three flashes, and they're ejecting.
Ejection.
They're ejecting. The plane hits, boom, explosion, and they're too low, and all three of those guys rode their seat in.
Oh no.
That's just part of the stuff that was going on there. But I made mention to you early
Hey,
on.
hey, do me a favor. Move a little bit closer. Your seat squeaks when you're rocking.
Okay, does it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
How
you
about that?
mentioned.
How
Yeah,
about
perfect,
that? All right.
perfect.
Nothing worse than a squeaky seat, I always. So we were talking a little bit about when I first got there, and I was, as I mentioned to you up at Omaha, was that when I got there, they take you down with the wing commander, and he's sitting in his office, and so you go in and salute, and he welcomes you and tells you you're shit hot and all this kind of stuff. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, this massive explosion takes place,
Yeah.
and his brick goes off, and he looks at it and says, "Come with me." And what had happened was the Thunder Chiefs, the Weasel airplanes, the two-seaters, carried AGM-78s, and the AGM-78 was the missile they used against surface-to-air missile radar sites up over Hanoi. And this guy had come in and blown a tire. The 105G model,
Mhm.
approach speed was 205 knots.
Holy crap! They have a drogue chute or
Yeah, all that on there. Yeah, but these guys were hauling ass when they come in on approach. And so I think it was like 205. So he had touched down and blew a tire and run off the runway. So he's out there, and these guys are climbing out, and the plane's on fire. So they bring the big fire trucks out, and the explosion we heard was that AGM-78 going off. And it
oh,
blew up the fire truck, and I think it killed two or three of the firemen that were out there. But I had been at Crot probably 30 minutes, and I'm thinking to myself, this is unbelievable.
welcome to the war.
Welcome to the real world.
Yeah.
But I've got another one that shows how stuff works. And this was when I was over at Kadena. I went back to States, went to Nellis, went to Weasel School, and then went back to Kadena. And I don't remember if I told you this one, but this one is classic. We had a mission every night we called Dawn Patrol. And what we would do is we were in Taiwan at the time at CCK and supported the Chinese Air Force, the National Chinese Air Force. So Dawn Patrol, we'd send 4 F-4s up every night and patrol up there in the Formosa Strait and the strait out there. And some nights when you're out there, you'd look over to China and you would see MiGs going back, following us back and forth at night, conning over there. So these guys from the 44th Squadron are going to go out on Dawn Patrol. So they taxi down. They got a 4-ship sitting in the Army area. So the first two take off. And as they're starting, and they've got the gear up, flaps up, and they're starting to make the turn out over the strait, the number one plane engine compressor stalls and comes apart and catches fire. Ooh, bad. So the wingman says, "Lead, you're on fire." Well, he doesn't say, "What lead?"
Oh no, the guy in the back that
The guy
launched.
that's sitting there in the Army area thinks it's him. So he shuts down and he jumps out of his airplane and he's running across the ramp. Meanwhile, the other two are turning out over the strait, and the leader says, "Check me out." So the number 2 man comes up underneath him and says, "You're really on fire." The back seater in the front airplane, he's had enough. He pulls the handles and they both eject. But here's the funny part. The canopy from the back seater comes back and goes in the number 1 engine of the number 2 Phantom that's out there checking, it blows up and they eject.
Oh my God. They lost 2 airplanes in
Yeah.
10 minutes.
So let's recap. We've got one that's shut down. He thinks he's on fire and he's running across the ramp.
Uh-huh.
Got 2 other Phantoms that now are they're in the ocean. They're history. And you got 4 guys in the chute out there floating down. Well, it's nighttime. So they launch the helicopters and they come out and they can only find 3 of the 4 crew members.
Uh-huh.
The other guy has got a broken shoulder. The first guy that went out, that his raft is turned over with the dark side up. And he's laying on the raft. Well, they can't find him. He floats around out there all night. And he tells us later when he got picked up that he could look over at the base and see the base and hear the music coming from the officers club.
Oh no. As he's laying there.
He's laying there in the room, so he can't come in. So that was bad and everything. So anyway,
So did they change the procedures for you? Now you have to say call sign. Hey, Vlad 1, you're on fire.
Supposed to say call sign, but they didn't do that. So anyway, that but
Oh,
that was classic. And the guy that was there in the mobile watching all this couldn't believe it, on that and everything. So
I bet he's shaking his head. What was it like getting a SAM shot at you? Those big telephone poles.
Yeah, what they would do is they would normally what we saw they would go with 3 of them, and I spent the only time I went up there was at night, so you could see them. I mean, you could see them off the ground, and they would send 3 up, and on occasion they would level one off, and it would come up, level off, and it would go straight and then come right straight up, and that. And of course, the B-52s are sitting there in formation. That and their maneuverability is not that great. So we see a couple of them get hit, but what we would do is, if you look down for us, because we would be behind the 52s, is that if you saw one come up, you turned basically and pointed at it and started a descent. And because you wanted it to go by you, it couldn't make the turn. And
right.
It had a proximity, whatever kind of fuse they had on, but it generally would go by you, and then the backseater would see it explode behind you or up away from you. One night, Bill has a grease pencil and was marking on the canopy, and there was, I think he marked 23 of them in the air at one time.
Jeez.
Yeah, flying around. And the thing is, if you got close enough, you could hear it go by.
Really? Over the sound of the jet?
Yeah.
And you're
like, going by. Yeah. Yeah, you could hear it.
Wow.
And so that's kind of what you would do. They were shooting a whole bunch of small anti-aircraft, probably 37 or whatever down there. You could see that coming up and exploding down there. But that was pretty low behind that. But they also had radar directed 85 millimeter. I think it was 85 millimeter, and that was the scary one, because you would see it explode above you, and that as you're going in, and that was the one that I always thought was scary the most.
Did you ever get any holes in the airplane, or did you hear it go tink?
No, I never, not over there, but I did it. I was on a bombing mission down in Quezon, and we went in, and there was 2 of us, and we were bombing, and we made one pass. That's all we ever did, was one pass.
Mm-hmm.
And so we came off, and I was making a left turn, and Bill says, "I think they're tracking you." And so I switched back real quick, because you could see the puffs of the 30. Yeah. So I switched real back, and I felt kind of a shudder. I thought it was jet wash from Leeds, what I thought. And so we got back up away from there, and we do a check where the other airplane comes up underneath and looks at you. Mm-hmm. And he was back there quite a while. So and came back and said it looked like he got peppered to the bottom. And what had happened, that it came that close that it actually blew off part of the AIM-7 missile I had on there.
Oh,
and it was gone. The
crap.
Yeah, it was gone. Yeah. So
and what's your warhead on an AIM-7? Is it 7 pounds or 8 pounds?
Yeah, I don't think it's that. it might be 7, 8, 10 pounds, something like that. But of course, it's high explosive. I mean, it's and all that, but it was gone.
It would have blown your wing off, right?
Wires were hanging out the front.
That would
Wires.
have blown your wing off right over enemy territory.
Those set right up underneath your ass where those set. So it would have been history. Yeah. So
well, you were right at the end because I mean they started the bombing campaign in '72, right?
yeah, 72 is when they started, and then when I got there, we were still going up into Laos up on the trail, and a lot of stuff going on down the south. Went down there quite a bit. I ended up I don't know how many I went to north. I think I had 25 or 30 missions up north, something like whatever it was.
Right.
But the campaign there in 72 in December when the 52s went in, and that was the big leagues. There was a lot going on in that.
Yeah.
We did our squadron did mid cap, and then we also had we would go and support the guys out of Ubon that were doing the chaff runs, and that was the very first day. We'd go and be the very first guys to go in.
Yeah.
And we'd behind them. They'd run a big chaff trail through over Hanoi, and that would kind of filter out and kind of give a little bit of a jamming on the radar and everything. So we did that several times with them and the 52s and that. So yeah.
Now was Robin Olds, was he in on your base or was he at
No, he was there quite a bit early, Taco. He was in the early 65, 66 at Ubon.
Okay.
The 8th wing was there at Ubon, and that's where he was. That's where he was based out of. Yeah, when he went over there. Yeah.
What a cool guy. Did you ever get to meet him in your career?
Yes, I did. I got to meet him at Luke. He came to when I was instructing at Luke. He was there with them as our guest speaker for a graduating class, and
that's cool.
Was pretty neat. Yeah. I was in the restroom, and everybody's in their mess dress uniforms and everything, and I'm in there going to the bathroom, and he walks in the stall beside me. and so I'm standing there, and he says, well, Captain, he said, how long you been flying the F-4? And I said, well, I don't know, since 72. He says, he said, I haven't flown it in years. And he said, I could probably go out and start it up right now and kick your ass on the gunnery range. And I said, well, General Olds, that's probably true, but I'll guarantee that I can go up and kick your ass in air to air.
You said that to Olds?
He looks at me and he says, I like you. And he takes me out and starts buying me drinks.
That's classic. And for those that don't know, Robin Olds was the Meg killer, right?
Yeah. Hey, well, he was a triple ace. He from World War II, and I think he had something like 17 kills or something like that.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'm in trouble now.
Well, that's actually fantastic. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Getting to meet General Olds.
And the other guy that was that we had as a speaker, which would be near and dear to you, is Joe Foss.
You had Joe Foss come out?
Yes, sir. Yeah, Joe Foss was there to speak. That Medal of Honor winner and Marine ace and all that. And he was really a neat guy at the time.
Was he governor of South Dakota at the time?
No, he was not. I think this would have been in 70, probably around 76 time frame. And that it was the second class I had in there. And Foss came out and was one of the speakers. It was a speaker there and all that. But he was really neat. There was a really class guy when he came in. And that.
Yeah, I never got to meet him. I met his wife Dee Dee. Just fantastic program that the Joe Foss Institute puts together for leadership. I used to teach that patriotism in schools. As a matter of fact, anybody who is looking for a volunteer opportunity out there, look up the Joe Foss organization, and they have Patriot. You go into elementary schools, junior highs, teach them Bill of Rights and Constitution and things like that. It's really neat program.
Yeah, but he was, and a lot of the folks that were there in F-4 school, students really didn't know until they read something about Joe Foss, because of course he was in the Marines, back in World War II and all those things. And so if you weren't a student of some of this stuff and that kind of followed it, which I kind of was, then it's he was, and he was an excellent speaker. It's obvious that he'd done a lot of public speaking and had great stories and everything. So it was good to see him and that.
What's the last vignette you have of an oh shit time you had in Thailand?
Oh, it wasn't really an oh shit time. We were coming out one night, and we had escorted out the chaff birds from Ubon,
Mhm.
and so we were sitting there coming back, and Red Crown, who was the controlling agency out there, the ship out there in the Gulf of Tonkin, with all the radar on, came up on the screen, came up and said, "You have a blue bandit, such and such bearing." And blue bandits were MiG-21s, and that
Mhm.
went, so anyway, and he said, "Heads up." So Bill Rivette in the back seater, run the radar down, and boom, there he was,
Ah,
locked him up. Well, I was wingman, and my leader, Ray Roper, at the time, said they were having trouble with the radar, and that you got the lead, and
go get him.
go get him. So we turned and picked the pace up, and so on my tape at home, somewhere around here, I asked Red Crown, "Am I cleared to shoot?" And he says he's in the dark. And I'm thinking, in the dark, which means they're not really sure right now where this guy is. Well, we've got him. Bill would take him, unlock it, lock it again, back. I keep asking on the tape, "Am I cleared to shoot?" Well, I look out again one of these clear nights, and you can see him
Yeah.
coming, because his afterburner was the glow like on a T-38. It had that blue glow. And I asked one more time, "Am I clear to shoot?" And he says, "No, he's in the dark." And about that time, I see these flashes,
Mhm.
and here comes two AIM-7s across the sky, and the first one, Taco, the guy's in a bank, and that
The bad guy.
bad guy's in a bank, and the first missile hits right back in the tailpipe and explodes. You can see the silver airplane. You actually could see it when it lit up. And the
Right.
second hit right behind, looked like right behind the canopy, and this thing just disintegrates.
Uh-huh.
It was probably, I don't think he was 2 miles, mile away from us.
Right.
And it wasn't 15 seconds later, this other F-4 just comes blowing through, oof, right by.
And who was that?
Well, this guy was out of Udorn, and they had what they called a tree. He was a tree bird, and a tree bird had a system in it where they could decode the IFF off the planes, and the
Right.
main around with IFFs because they all that stuff. So he had positive ID on the guy. Well, so did we, and so I never thought, and I didn't shoot, and I got back down on the ground, and my squadron commander complimented me in a way. He said, "You don't really know unless and it could have been the other F-4." Well, I said it wasn't, because I had visual on him.
Yeah.
But he said, "You did what you're supposed to do, because you don't know really." So okay. So
Yeah, but
later,
you got cheated out of a MiG
I,
kill, man.
I got cheated out potentially. So we don't know with the missiles, who knows? But we had him locked in that. But anyway, so fast forward decades, and for Christmas, Deanna, my wife, bought me a book that was about the MiG kills in 72, 73. So I
Right.
get the pages out and I look at it. Well, this was a major, and he was uh, there, and the back seater actually was a Navy exchange guy that was with the guys up at Udorn. Well, I looked this guy up, and he lives about 50 miles from here up in Whitesboro, wherever it is, Texas. I was going
Uh-huh.
to call him up, because in his statement on the book, he kept saying to Red Crown, "Tell that other F-4 to stay clear. Tell the other." Well, that's me. And I'm,
Oh, you could have got shot.
"You
Oh my
son of a bitch." And he tells how he chased it for 30 miles. Well, okay, I get that. But I had him in, probably from the time we locked him up till this all took place, 6 or 7 minutes at the
right.
most. We were
Right.
already there and that. So I look back, and and my backseater says, "Well, we did the right thing," but I said I had my finger on the trigger, and if I'd moved that trigger a quarter of an inch, all hell would have broke loose on the airplane with the missiles coming off. But you know, and so anyway, that was the last vignette of the whole deal. But it was funny because you you, you all of a sudden your training comes into play, and you look down, and on the Phantom it had a row of lights that would light up green when everything was ready, and and what we did, Taco, was because the way the switching was on there, you would take a big pen or an ink pen tube where the ink was, and you stick that on that switch so it'd be stick out about an inch. So when you had to arm it, there wasn't any question. You just reach down and hit that tube, and you'd arm up the arm, and it was ready to go.
Right.
As far as trying to reach down there at night and try to figure it out and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, yeah. So
What a time, man! What a
yeah,
time.
yeah.
You did a year over there, right?
Yeah, and then I got the opportunity. We did the year, and they shut everything down. We went into training mode, and they were trying to do the training mode, and maybe next time I'll tell you what took place during the training mode.
Okay, all right. I'll bring you back on, man. I tell you what,
But
Zane.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, no, no. I'll bring you back on, and we'll have a part two, like I did with Steve Ladd, because I
Okay.
love these old F-4 stories. That's a great airplane.
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, it was
I
fun.
got a ride. I got a ride here in an F-4D, and it had a stick in the back.
Yep.
And I flew with a guy named Dick Lawyer. You probably don't know him. He says, "My name's Dick Lawyer. Just remember, all lawyers are dicks except for me."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a great guy. He was a secret astronaut, had gotten chosen for that MOL program where he was going to go up in the Gemini spaceship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Neat, really neat guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I will get you back on again, and I can't thank you enough for joining us. I'll leave you this. Here's an old picture.
Yeah.
When
There
you
you
were
go. There you go.
you were chief pilot, and I wrote about this on Facebook. It's funny. I had just gotten back from Iraq. Oh, I lose you, Zane? I guess I lost Zane. Well, folks, I tell you what. So what happened was, oh, here we go. Zane, you're
Yeah.
back?
Yeah. I'm back. I'm back.
So what happened was I got back from Iraq and I brought a C-130 up to Skyball. That was 2006. And they gave us, hey, you got free tickets to come to the ball. Oh, great. So I called Teresa on the way home. Hey, throw on your Marine Corps ball dress. We're going to this big fancy shindig. And I show up in my dress blues. And we walk up, and there's the 777, which it was brand new, pretty much new for us. And this was like a brand new one, where they were doing a C check on it. And I see there's like a lift going up to the back elevator, and I said, "Hey, let's go." They're giving tours of the 777. Let's go up there. So we get on the lift, and there's another couple with us and the lift operator. And I look at the guy and I go, "Hey, how are you? You know, Mitch Bell?" And he goes, "Mike Moncrief. This is my wife, Rosie. Nice to meet you. This is my wife, Teresa." Shake hands. And I'm like, Moncrief. God, that guy's name sounds so familiar. And as we're going up, my wife says, "So are you part of the Moncrief family of Fort Worth?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm the black sheep." He was the mayor.
He's the mayor. Yeah.
He's the mayor. So I said, "Wow, so you guys are going up to take a tour of the 777 too?" And he says, "Oh, no, there's a private party up there. It's like $5,000 a ticket. And we're going to this party." And I go, "Oh, I didn't know about any party. I thought they were giving tours. We'll be taking the elevator back down because we certainly don't have the tickets." And to his credit, he goes, "No, um, I want to invite you and your wife. You are a guest. If anybody says a word, I'll pull my checkbook out and stroke a check for 10,000." I'm like, "Sir, I'm telling you, I can't let that happen. You can't do this." And he says, "No, you're my guest. Look, I recognize that. That's Iraq campaign medal. You just got back from Iraq, right?" "Yes, sir." He says, "Enjoy it, Major." So I get on the bird. I'm the only guy in uniform walking around talking to people. And up walks Arpy, Gerard Arpy, the CEO. And we just busted him for the pup deal. And he comes up to me. He goes, "Hi, Major. How are you?" Notice you're a pilot with your wings. Hey, we're not hiring right now at American, but if we start hiring again, you ought to think about putting an application in. I'm like, oh, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. And we walked off, and Teresa and I are sitting there drinking, looking out at the function from this open door that was roped off. And she goes, "Hey, why didn't you tell them you're already a pilot for 'em?" I go, "Are you kidding? They kicked me out of here. They found out I was a scumbag pilot. I'm enjoying my anonymity as a Marine, you know." And then I walk up to the flight deck, take Teresa up there, and there you are giving tours,
Yeah.
right there, man. That
Nice
is
pic
cool.
nice picture.
That was fun. I had to dig. It
Yeah,
took me 2
yeah,
hours to find that thing.
yeah,
Look at you got the AC blowing up in there for you, and you're looking all
yeah.
sharp wearing your uniform.
I'll tell you, I think it was, the same time was the Thunderbirds up there when you were there?
Yes, and they had
Yeah,
the female, first
the fe
female
first female.
Thunderbird
Well,
down.
she came into the cockpit, and, Rick Owens and I were the 2 that were up doing the tours,
Uh-huh.
and so Rick, of course, was over flying, Toms and F-4s and that over with the reserves, and so we're sitting there, and she comes in, and we're standing there with her, and I said, "You know, this is a pretty neat deal with you being the first female to fly with the Thunderbirds." Well, she starts going in this business of, well, we're a team and blah 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 and all that blah. And I said, oh, cut the bullshit. It is pretty special. And she looks at me and says, you know, it is pretty special.
Did you give her a card, say, "Hey, when you get out, give me a call"?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, I tell you what, Zane, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I've got you for an hour, and I look forward to having you on again. Give your
Okay.
wife Dee Dee a hug, and I will talk to you soon, brother.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Taco. You do a great job. Appreciate it. Bye
I
bye.
appreciate you, man. See you, boss. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. Love Zane. We'll get some more stories out of Zane here next time. And until I see you again, adios, hasta luego, sa wiedersehen, tschüss, shishini, au revoir, dominicato gozaimasu, tando shide kurasai, ciao, arrivederci, tashakur, das vidanya, do widzenia. We'll get you. You guys have a great one. I'll see you now. Bye bye.